Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Historic Pullman Foundation podcast. I am your host, Robert Montgomery. I'm the executive director at Historic Pullman Foundation. And today's guest for today's show is none other than Ronnie Frey. Ronnie, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on this podcast with you guys. And I'm Ronnie Frey. I'm the creator of the pretty popular Instagram account called Doorways of Chicago. And there I share my love of vintage doorways and architecture and anything else vintage like planes, trains, and automobiles. But they all have doors too. But I'm an interior designer by trade. But during the pandemic, I got laid off like a lot of people. And I decided to pivot my career towards more of my hobbies, which are architectural photography, walking tours, traveling, and also I do a lot of social media content creation.
Okay, so if you want to check out his work, go to doorwaysofchicago.com or at Doorways of Chicago for Instagram. But on your website, I was reading your story about you went over to the UK for a work trip and it was raining out and you found a magic doorway or something like that. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, I did. It was crazy because I had already started my account I hadn't started the account yet, but I was following an account called Doorways of Paris, which is amazing. And they're colorful. I mean, we don't have a lot of color here in Chicago. So we arrived, jet lagged, and from London, we went up to Plymouth, which is about a 4-hour bus ride. It was pouring down rain, and I spotted this bright blue doorway in this really kind of ominous looking building, which later I found out was a fort, but it looked like a prison almost. And while my colleagues took naps before dinner, I grabbed my umbrella. It was windy too. And walked back to where this door was just to get a picture of it.
Wow.
And that kind of started the whole thing. And when I got back to Chicago, I started the Instagram account, and that was one of the first doorways that I posted. But I mean, just because of the lack of color in Chicago, I just loved it because it was bright blue.
Wow, that's an amazing story. And what caught my eye was it something that door was really close to where the Mayflower sailed. Is that true?
Yeah, it was. Plymouth is obviously where that happened, and we actually got to see that site, which is pretty amazing to think about that. And we got to see the restaurant that they had their last dinner in before they set sail. It was pretty cool.
Wow, a lot of history.
Yeah.
So is that what brought you, what connects you to Pullman? Because there's a lot, I'm sure you've seen it, but there's a lot of history here in Pullman.
Yeah. I mean, my connection to Pullman, and I might say my love affair with Pullman, started in August of 2019. So as my Instagram account started to grow, I think at that time I had about 2,000 followers. I got a message from Lisa Burback, and she was running the Residents of Pullman Instagram account at the time. And she offered me 2 tickets to the Pullman house tour, saying that there was some really great doorways. And I had heard of Pullman, and I always wanted to go, but I hadn't been yet. And that was the first really free thing or perk that I'd received as a result of the account. So I was so excited. And I came down to the October tour that year, and I was completely blown away by the town, the history, and I've been back to nearly, I missed one tour since then, but I was sick, unfortunately. I was so mad. And all the railroad days and most of the events. And I was fortunate to have been given a press pass for the dedication ceremony in 2021 for the new Visitors Center and the Administration Clock Tower building on Labor Day. And I like to go as often as I can just to wander around and take more photos.
That's awesome. So while you were here on these tours, did this tie into your door theme? Were you able to take some good pictures of some doors here?
Oh yeah, and I forgot to look, but I probably have 2,000 pictures of Pullman just alone.
Wow. So are there some pretty interesting doors here? I mean, I've been on the tours and I walk around, I see the doors. Um, uh, Corresponding to your story in the UK, we don't have a whole lot of colorful doors here. So what's your lure to the doors here in the Chicago area or in the Pullman area?
So there's a really cool doorway at on Champlain. It's 11233, I think, is the address.
Hmm.
It's very classical in its design. It's got an arched canopy that kind of juts out over the door, and then it has like a limestone pediment above it, which I think the architect even snuck in some details that could even be interpreted as Art Deco in that overhead, although it wouldn't have been Deco because that style didn't happen yet. But it's very modern looking, and I just think it's an interesting combination. It's more pronounced than a lot of the other doorways in Pullman, so it makes me wonder, was it designed specifically for a person or what? So, yeah, and then in Chicago, I mean, when I started the account, I had no idea that it was going to be an endless supply of content. It's an endless supply. I mean, I can go to a neighborhood that I've been to hundreds of times and find more cool doorways to photograph. So, and a lot of it for me too is about the philosophical and meanings of doorways. Like, you can go through a portal into meditation, or through pass through a doorway, so to speak, into another chapter of your life and that type of thing. I did a lot of reading during the pandemic and prior to that of an author named Eckhart Tolle. And he talks a lot about his whole premise is living in the moment. And so when I go out and explore, I really, and the whole idea behind living in the moment is to not think, sort of like when you meditate. And so when I go out exploring, I realized much later, that that's my meditation, because I'm not thinking about anything. I'm just enjoying what I'm seeing. I'm looking for cool things to photograph. So a lot of times on my account too, I'll put in quotes that Eckhart Tolle says. I have kind of a theme for every day. So Thursdays is Therapeutic Thursday. I like to, give a positive message or, something that will inspire people on those days.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Now, while you were here in Pullman, you called the National Park Visitor Center the most fabulous must-see preservation project in all of Chicago. Please tell me about that. Please elaborate on that.
Sure. So the aura and the flavor of the community, it's been preserved along with the architecture. And there's not many places where I think you can feel that extreme, what I would call like the progress of preservation, like the visitor center renovation. And at the very same time, you can also sense the preservation journey or the struggle, like the Hotel Florence, where it's like one room at a time. But I understand it takes funds, but it's just kind of cool to see all of that in one place. And I love to show everything in my photography anyway, I call it from the pretty to the gritty. So one of my favorite photos is the rusted pulley that kind of juts out from the erecting shop. And it's got like a tattered rope hanging off of it. And you can just almost sense like what it would have been like, or what that was used for, in the making of the train car. So it's kind of that whole thing to me that just makes it must see. And also it's so huge, like the fact that there's over 1,000 homes and all of the buildings and the hotel and the arcade building and the factory, and just the fact that it was designed in a year and built in about a year. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. That is amazing. It sounds like you're a huge fan of historic Pullman. And what would you tell someone to excite them to explore Pullman for themselves?
I think it's a chance to see the only still intact and totally planned community that's right here in our own backyard. There's other projects like this around the world, but I'm pretty sure this is the only one in the United States. And just also because of the way things have been preserved, like I said just previously, you can feel the aura of the time, and you can imagine what it was like when the town was built. And then also, I just think it's a great opportunity to get a sense for the community that's there and to dispel all the myths that we all hear about the South Side of Chicago.
Hmm. Yeah, big time, because we get a bad rep about the South Side and what goes on down here, and
Yeah.
not a lot of people are even know that this even exists.
Right. And
Um,
I've never once felt uncomfortable or compromised or anything when in Pullman. I mean, I love it. It's just, I feel like I'm in a small town.
so tell me about the story of Pullman. I'm sure the times you've come here, you've heard tons and tons of different stories. What stories about Pullman inspire you?
So I love the story that, I mean, if we want to talk about Mr. Pullman for a minute,
Sure, sure.
uh, you know, like you said, was he a good guy? Was he a bad guy? I think that for me, at least, I think he wanted to be a good guy, and I think it was a brilliant idea, and the plan was quite successful when it started. Um, and I just love the idea that he had this concept of creating this town for his workers and giving them these luxuries that didn't exist anywhere.
Mm,
With the idea that this is going to keep them happy and make them better workers. But I think that the idea was to work for everyone. I mean, it was going to make him money too. But then later on, obviously, I just think it's so interesting that he was just so that he wouldn't negotiate
mm,
at all. And I often wonder if it. He obviously had a lot of money, so I wonder if he overextended himself with the town. And then when the problems hit with the economy that he couldn't see a way out. But then I also think, but was he really? So all those questions kind of come up in my mind.
hmm.
Um, you know, it just makes me wonder, like, what kind of a person he really was. But I really think he was so innovative, and I think that it was a great idea. I just wish that the story would have went differently, and that he would have negotiated a bit. Could have,
Yeah.
but we wouldn't have Labor Day.
We got a day off in the whole mix of it.
Right.
So, in your opinion, you've probably not just the tours that are here in Pullman, but I'm sure you've been on tons of tours, and you even give your own tours. In your
Yeah.
opinion, what makes a great tour?
So I think for me, choosing the neighborhoods carefully for their beauty and their charm, and also ones that have a lot of storied history, and also just setting the stage. Like, I have an Art Deco tour downtown, so when I start off that tour, I talk a lot about what was happening at that time period and why it was so different, and why people were so attracted to it. So kind of set the stage for that whole Roaring Twenties and flapper type of atmosphere that was happening. And then I think this is one of my specialties. I think is finding the hidden gems,
Mm,
and I know that people love that. So a lot of history, for instance, on my Old Town tour that no one's ever heard of. Like, I've given it to hundreds of people, and I've only had one or two people say in this certain section that they've heard of this type of
hmm.
thing. So I love that. And then I like to show a variety of things like homes, buildings, notable properties, and even street art. I love street art. So whenever there's some mural or something along the tour route, I like to talk about the artist that created it and what they were
Mm,
trying to say. And then I like to educate architecturally. So a lot of the neighborhoods have many different styles, architectural styles in the homes. So I like to tell people what style they are, and then also, educate them on the architectural terms and the elements that are part of those styles and what makes them a particular style. And then I usually have 3/4 of the way to the end, I'll have little quizzes. And I often get people say to me, like, I can't quit seeing that egg and dart molding everywhere. So that's pretty fun to hear.
So wait, you give quizzes on your tours?
Oh, just little fun, like quizzes,
Okay.
like for instance, I point out an egg and dart molding, which happens a lot in Chicago, and
Mm.
exterior and interior. But then, we'll see it again towards the end of the tour, and I'll just say, "What's this molding called?" But I think it's fun because people love learning that stuff, and I studied it a lot in college, and it's just kind of a really cool thing for me to be able to remember what all these terms meant and to let other people know.
Sure, sure. So did you go to school for architecture or art or
No,
photography?
interior design, but I
Interior
studied,
design.
yeah, in that curriculum, we studied a lot of architectural history too.
Got you. Now, you just brought up a term, hidden gems. I'm sure that there's got to be millions of hidden gems in Chicago, but how do you go about finding these hidden gems? Do people tip you off, or do you do some extensive research?
So most of the time, I just find things just by exploring.
Hmm.
And the ultimate benefit about wandering around a neighborhood in Chicago is that you stumble upon so many cool scenarios, architecture, doorways, art, like I was talking about. But sometimes I get tips, or sometimes I read about something or see something posted that I've never seen before, and then I go search that out and try to find it. But I think the best way to explore a neighborhood is just to allow yourself lots of time. I usually go out for like a half a day, sometimes even a full day. And I try not to be tied into any kind of set route or schedule, even though I kind of, know where I want to go. But
Hmm.
without fail, I always end up going down streets that I didn't intend to, or, veering from my intended route. And so I like to think of it like let the hours in the day like lead you around.
Hmm. Now, soon, and I don't know the exact date, I don't have it in front of me, but you're coming down to Historic Pullman Foundation's exhibit hall to talk about the architectural genius of Pullman's original architect.
Yeah,
I might be saying this wrong. Salon Beeman.
I think that's correct. Yep.
Got you. What
Yeah. So that's
specific? Yeah,
September 22nd. It's a Sunday.
September 22nd.
But he's one of my favorite architects. I first learned about him from my first visit to Pullman, but then, since then I found out so many other things that he designed in Chicago. But the thing about what he did in Pullman that I think is so brilliant, one of the things is he made all the homes look a little bit different, from one another. Yet he tied them all together, as well as the buildings, with this unifying color scheme.
Hmm.
Uh, and some of the architectural details that show up on a lot of the facades are just so interesting. Like uh, the lintel is the piece over a door and a window. A lot of times it's arched or straight. It's structural, but he did all these what I call eyebrow lintels over the doors and windows. You probably know what I'm talking about from walking up and down the streets. But he had a lot of fun when he designed things, and I love that about his work. And then also like interiors, the placement of rooms and skylights in the homes is just brilliant. And then also because the town, like I was talking about, was built in just about a year, he
Hmm.
did a lot of what I call standardization, and he repeated a lot of certain details, like those lintels and pediments above the doorways and arches, which I think then took a lot less time to construct, just because the building teams would be familiar with those elements, and they wouldn't have to go like, oh, what's that? I have to build that now. So it was a repetition, and his style's often been termed as picturesque eclecticism,
Hmm.
and that's exactly what it is. He combined a lot of different styles, Queen Anne, French Second Empire. There's some Gothic, and he just all made it look cohesive. And I just think that that's really quite an amazing thing.
Awesome. So when you come to speak, you're going to be speaking specifically about him and his work here
Yeah,
in Pullman, but will you cover any of his other work that he did anywhere else?
I probably will, because I'm supposed to talk for an hour.
Okay.
Not that Pullman couldn't take up an hour, but but what I think is really cool is I have a new studio in the Fine Arts Building, which is where I am right now,
Mm.
and I don't know if you know about the history of that, but it started out as the Studebaker Carriage Company's. It was their facility where they actually made the carriages, but they had a
Mm.
huge showroom here too. And they were so impressed with the work that he did in Pullman that they hired him to do this building. And so this building is a vertical or a skyscraper, at the time skyscraper, version of what he did at Pullman. And what's so cool about it is he was one of the first architects that designed not kind of, but an assembly line type of factory. So, in Pullman, you probably know, like they started at the end and they would start in the first bay and they would construct it, and then they would bring this car out, and they had the system where it would move it, the 90-degree direction and back into the next bay, and it would get painted out and back in, and it would get upholstered and on down the line. And so here in the Fine Arts Building, the carriages started on the top floor and they constructed them, and then everything in this building is almost original, so 125 years old. I can take you down the hall and show you the original freight elevators, and they're the size of a carriage. So the carriage would go down one floor, and then it would be painted, and it would go down a floor and be upholstered, and it made its way to the showroom. So, this was a new concept, and he was one of the first architects that designed it this way, and it really made everything so much more cohesive and easier, and they could make things faster. And it's probably one of the reasons why Pullman could pump out so many of those rail cars in such a short amount of time, because it was all designed, in a brilliant way. I just love his work. He had a studio in this building too. So
oh, wow.
It's really fun for me. He's one of my favorite architects. So to be in this building and know that he walked around here is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, we're very fortunate to be in Chicago. There's so much history here. This place has been here for well over 100 years, and there's so many things that have been in these communities and this whole city for well over 100 years, and there's so many opportunities for us to learn history, United States history in this one city.
Right.
I'm sure that when you come to Pullman, you get all types of emotions with your creative juices and your artistic thoughts. But what inspiration, if any, what's the main inspiration that you get from this place called Pullman?
The main inspiration I get is pretty simple, and it's just to keep advocating for historic preservation in Chicago, and to keep fighting to save our beloved history, because, as you know, so much of it gets torn down, and we have landmarking, but it's not the whole city, and anytime I can sign a petition to save a workers' cottage or any type of building, get involved and donate, and I just think it's wonderful and inspires me to just keep doing that.
Well, awesome. Well, is there anything, we're going to close this out really soon. Is there anything you want our guests to know about you, your business, your tours, your speaking engagements, obviously the one that you're coming down here to speak on in September?
Yeah, I want everyone to get a ticket, because I'm donating my time, and this one is to be a great fundraiser for the town. And as far as me and tours, I feel so grateful that I can do this and share my passions with people. And we always have so much fun on every tour. So if you want to check it out, I have 6 tours in the city. I do one inside the Fine Arts Building too, of the history here, so that's a new one. But I couldn't be in this building and not design a tour for it. So yeah, I mean, it's just come to the house tour. It's amazing. Like I say, it's one of my favorite weekends of the year. And I hope you guys at some point start doing the holiday one again. I went to one of those right before the pandemic, and then obviously that shut down, but that was amazing.
Right.
So yeah, and come and see me. We have a second Friday, every second Friday of each month here in the building. We have an open house evening where a lot of the tenants have their spaces open, and you can come and go through all 10 floors and meet artists and shop and support this cool artistic community here.
Wow, that's awesome. You say that's every
second Friday. It's called Second Fridays.
Fridays.
Yeah, 5 to 9 p.m. Great fun evening here in the building.
I might have to check that out myself.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, There you have it, folks. Ronnie Fry, thank you again for coming out and joining us today for our podcast. This will be up soon, and we'll let you know when it's up. Again, I am the host, Robert Montgomery. I'm the executive director at Historic Pullman Foundation. I just want to say thank you guys for watching the podcast, and we'll see you next time.